And joining me now from New York, CBS News political director and Face the Nation moderator John Dickerson, as well as CBS News contributor Bob Schieffer. Both have moderated many debates through the years. You could find no two gentlemen better equipped than to discuss what it is that perhaps a record number of Americans, guys, will be tuning into tonight and perhaps seeing these two candidates for the first time. And so for two candidates, really, for whom so much is already baked in the cake still, to what degree tonight will persuasion be the focus?
Well, I'll take it. I'll start, Bob. There are a couple of different audiences. There's persuading the people who are already likely to vote for one side or the other. It's getting them enthusiastic to either send in an early ballot or to volunteer for the campaign. They're the people who are already on the teams that just need to be fired up more by seeing from their candidates what they like and what they want to see. Then there's the persuadable voters. I think those voters are probably going to move around a lot between now and Election Day. I think there are 3 debates. This will be, for some of those voters, this will be the first time they take a look at the candidates in a different light, maybe a little bit more serious light. So each of the candidates has to basically speak to their own voters, and then they have to think about those persuadables and not try and chase either group so much that you lose some of the other group.
You know, Josh, the vote we cast for president, I think, is different than any other vote we cast. Yes, it's about party. Yes, it's about issues. But I think overarching all of that, I think what sets this vote apart is people generally vote, I think, for the candidate that they would feel most comfortable with in time of crisis. So I think that's what most voters are looking for tonight. By now, the positions on the issues are pretty well known. What they're trying to judge in their own mind is which of these people could handle the presidency. How would they act in a time of crisis? Do they have the poise, the courage, the charm? I think all of that plays into what voters will be watching for tonight. So it's not just about issues. It's about who are these two people and which one of them could handle the awesome responsibilities of this office.
And John, given then the awesome responsibilities of the office and perhaps the import then of what we will see tonight, it would seem the idea of grading either of these two candidates essentially on a curve would be preposterous. So what then do you make of one of these, for lack of a better descriptive, storylines heading in with regard to Donald Trump?
Well, as we've seen in debates in the past, the storylines going in have a lot to do with how the debates themselves are seen. And so what both candidates are trying to do is shape the thinking that everybody brings into the debate, and particularly the people who assess and analyze the debate in the aftermath. So they're working the refs, not just the moderator of the debate who's doing the debate itself, but everybody who's analyzing it. And what the Clinton team is trying to do is basically lift up the grading, and they want the grading to be about issue mastery. You heard Robbie Mook, the campaign chairman for the Clinton campaign this morning, say that Hillary Clinton's going to show she has a mastery of the issues. Master of the issues is part of it, but what we've seen in the polling and seen in the past is that people assessing the candidates take a judgment about their temperament and their poise, which doesn't have anything to do with whether you know the 5 different things that are important about the U.S. relationship with NATO. And so the Trump campaign will try and have the turf of assessment be about kind of how he carries himself, how he may not know every last little detail, but he knows something in his gut, and that gut gives him a special kind of a judgment, and his life experience gives him a special kind of judgment. So it's not just grading them on the same material that is a part of the discussion, but what material to begin judging them on in the first place. And that's for us who analyze it, but also the voters are going to pick whatever they decide to judge them on, too.
You know, and that is exactly right, because the narration going into these debates is always the narration that both campaigns are putting out. And working the refs is a perfect way to put it. You see the Clinton campaign saying, you know, the moderator has to get in there and correct the record, has to be the first fact checker. And then on the other hand, you have Donald Trump saying, no, we don't even need a moderator. Well, both camps know that neither of those positions is exactly the way it's going to be. But these are, Josh, two very, very different candidates. And I would say this, and I mean no disrespect to either, two of the hardest people in American politics to interview for two totally different reasons. I mean, Hillary Clinton is very careful. It's very difficult to get her off the talking points. On the other hand, you have the king winging it. On the other side, you never know what he's going to say. I think the big job for the moderators is going to be keeping the time equal to make sure one or the other does not try to hog the amount of time that's set aside to debate these issues. I think what is it, John? There are nine 15-minute segments, something like that. The moderator's job is to make sure that both of them get equal time in each of these segments.
But John, with regard to the moderators, it certainly became something of a story, certainly yesterday, when organizers made it clear that they are not looking for moderators to, in fact, fact check these two candidates during the course of this debate. To Bob's point, obviously, that may anger one campaign more than the other, but it certainly inspired a question yesterday, specifically perhaps for these two candidates, and playing to their respective strengths and potential weakness here. What exactly should the role of the moderator be? What did you make then of what the organizers again said, that the moderator's job beginning tonight will not be to fact check these candidates?
The person who puts it best about what the moderator should do is Bob Schieffer, which is the candidates are supposed to debate between themselves, and the moderator should stay out of the way. Now, and the reason you want that to happen is not just on facts, on issues and on all questions. You want the competition between the two candidates to show what the choices are, what the differences are. And nobody has a greater interest in illuminating those differences and choices than the other candidate. So it works to illuminate the issues, but it also is important for fact-checking. However, if in the back and forth and the allocation of time and the hurly-burly of the moment, a fact comes across or gets put across that isn't correct, and the candidates haven't corrected the record, then the moderator steps in. And I think this is my own addition to that. I think the moderator steps in, but only if big stakes are at play. If the fact that's being debated is central to the nature of the argument that's going on, or if without correcting the record, the assessment voters make of whatever's being debated would be askew without correcting the record. I mean, you don't have to go in and fact check every tiny little detail. You want to stay focused on the big stuff, but the big stuff, the first thing you should be focused on is staying out of the way, letting these candidates be who they are in front of the voters for good or ill.
You're not being fair to either candidate, Josh, unless you give the other candidate the first opportunity to call out his or her opponent. And then if that doesn't happen, then the moderator says, look, for the record, X, Y, or Z. I mean, I think that's the way you do it. I would also like to say something else. This is a little harder than it sometimes looks. Fact-checking in real time, you don't have time to say, excuse me, can I stop and just Google this? I want to check this out. Or, it's kind of a tough job these moderators have. And I'm telling you, Lester Holt has my sympathy, among other things. This may be one of the hardest debates ever to moderate. I think Lester's a fine journalist. I think he's going to do a really good job, but it ain't the easiest job somebody's ever been given. I'll tell you that.
I know I've spoken to both of you with regard to the idea of the narrative and how it is perhaps what informs how we then see the debate when it's done. But really, even going back 40 years, guys, the social media was still in its relative infancy, even back in 2012. And so now here in 2016, where we have seen really one candidate in Donald Trump seemingly run his entire campaign via 140 characters or fewer. Now tonight, Twitter gets to weigh in, and we get to have any number of million insta-fact checkers, and certainly a populace online casting in real time how they think this is going. What impact do you think social media will have tonight?
Well, I think it has the chance to have an awful impact, actually. We saw in 2012 that a lot of the early Peter Hamby of CNN wrote a paper about the role of Twitter in the elections last time around. And one of the things that was in that paper that he wrote up at Harvard was that reporters essentially determined the narrative of the first debate in particular after about 15 minutes into the debate because of the chatter on Twitter. And so what happens is a narrative gets locked in that 15 minutes, usually from basically whoever is the quippiest and the most amusing on Twitter, and that bounces around. Well, two things are happening there. One, you're forgetting the rest of the debate, 3/4 of it, which hasn't happened yet. Secondly, the person who sets the narrative is the person who can be most clever in 140 characters, which has nothing to do with the two people who are going to be the leader of the free world. And so a lot of people have their head in Twitter and not in the debate. And that ends up, and that has nothing to do also, by the way, with real people who are maybe having their opinions and saying what they want on Twitter, which is having its own effect with other readers, but readers of Twitter, that is. So I think the danger of social media is huge. Usually, a nice thing about social media is it levels the playing field. It kind of deflates the elites, which I'm all for. But in this case, it can be distracting. And again, that narrative can get set in 15 minutes, which if we're going to, choose winners and losers based on 15 minutes and 140 characters, we're not in a good place.
And, the good news for both the candidates and the moderators is they will not know about all of this while it is taking place. It's tough enough to get through with one of these debates. And believe me, I've been through it. And to hear what people have to say about you. I mean, I remember in 2012, my all-time favorite tweet was somebody had tweeted out about me. Who is that old guy? Is that those old guy, one of those old guys on the Muppets that makes fun of the other characters? And that was one of the nice ones. But my advice to all of them, and also to Lester Holt, is no matter what they're saying about you on social media afterward, just remember every NFL quarterback who lost yesterday, they're saying worse things about him on Twitter tonight. And so you just have to, this is life in the city. This is how it is now. It's the golf course we all play on now. And it's not the same golf course we used to play on. That's for dead sure.
You're our Waldorf, Bob, among many, many, many things, to be sure. Bob Schieffer and John Dickerson, again, very much appreciate your time. Fully 1/3 of registered voters say that tonight will be important for them. Just how important, I guess it remains to be seen. I do know that we will all be watching, however. Gentlemen, as always, we appreciate the time.
You bet.